What if Christian creationists and atheist scientists in favor of evolution are both wrong? I think we all have caught ourselves at one point or another listening to one or more debates between a creationist and an evolutionist. We may have heard religious scientists like the famed mathematician John Lennox and the known atheist and renowned scientist Richard Dawkins. Most of us have been conditioned to believe it can be either the one or the other. God either created the world in 7 days and made man out of clay, even in a loose sense, by seeing the 7 days as epochs of indeterminable duration and leaving room for guided evolution, or the atheistic evolutionary view is correct, and everything was the result of a weird chemical and biological accident. They can't both be wrong, can they? Well, the matter may seem incredibly complex, or incredibly simple. It depends entirely on what side one finds oneself leaning towards when listening to such a debate. But what if both sides are wrong, and Genesis, with its whole narration of the creation and fall of man, is not about how we came to be as a species, but is rather a deep, symbolic reflection on the loss of innocence, and it has nothing to do with cosmology or biology, but rather with every human being that has ever walked on this planet. What if it has to do with our innocence and its loss, when the idea of good and evil invades our being, when possession of material things becomes more important than our own existence, and sadly we need to leave our little innocent self behind to meet the grown-up, harder side of us in order to survive. Throughout the centuries, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil has been mostly connected with the act of procreation. However, this explanation becomes highly doubtable when one considers the event of a man being with a woman as a high form not only of a bodily, meaningful union, but also of a connection on the level of mind, soul, and spirit. How can life be a gift and a miracle, and the very act that causes life be a sin? So, there must be another, deeper meaning to the concept of the tree of good and evil that has nothing to do with the act of sexual intercourse, but with a general change of the internal and external attitude towards the world. An inner choice to accept the very idea of evil and allow it to penetrate into our existence. With the idea of good and evil, man is forced to forsake the natural simplicity of his existence and accept inevitably the feeling of guilt and fear that goes with it. It's the feeling of guilt that causes sin, and not the other way around. It's a source for every inner division, contrast, and antithesis. When man sees evil in others, he is forced to see it also in himself. So the beginning of our return to the inner paradise of innocence must start there. How do we usually face guilt? By lying to ourselves in a desperate effort to create a false identity that obscures and denies our deeper, honest reality. This fake outer character is the fig leaf, the lie that tries to keep our truth and our humanity a well-kept secret. But if one is ashamed of who he is and keeps one's inner needs suppressed and even denies they are there, how can this person ever be truly happy and emotionally balanced? Even our sense of morality is essentially flawed, since there can never be a must when it comes to goodness. There can only be a natural desire to be truly happy, and a sense of how this can be achieved in order to be guided into the right thoughts and actions. Goodness for human beings is as natural as the air we breathe, and when one acts contrary to the natural human goodness, we must see it as a direct result of the ingenuine versions of being we are forced to embrace by society, which forces us to become destructive to ourselves and others. If the deeper nature of man is identified as happiness, then the only unnatural thing, the only true sin, we might say, is unhappiness itself. The main reason for not being self-destructive and harmful to others is the natural joy of life. Happiness is contagious, so when we are truly happy and free from guilt and fear, we also have the emotional surplus to be positive human beings and be good and beneficial to others. In other words, by being happy, we become a source of happiness for our close ones, our relatives, our friends, our neighbors, and everyone else we happen to come across. One of the main phenomena that makes us feel unhappy and insecure is the illusion of injustice in the world. But that only has to do with the fake, distorted values humanity has embraced, wholly incompatible with the essence of our humanity. For instance, when man comes to think of material possessions as more important than inner happiness itself, when the words "I have" become more important than the words "I am," that is a sign we've strayed from the natural path of our human nature. What if having riches we don't need is actually an existential curse and not a sign of God's approval? What if being wealthy actually is hindering us from being reunited with our true self, the child we've left behind and sacrificed on the altar of material values and superficial worldly success? What if our expensive car or our big house and all the comfort we are accustomed to is more of an existential burden than an actual source of true happiness for us? There are so many books and manuals out there instructing you on how to achieve wealth and success, but there are much less informative reads on true happiness independent of the appearance of things. The Stoic philosophers were among the first to acknowledge that the present moment must be a source of happiness for us, despite the actual material condition we find ourselves in. However, that's not so different as it may seem at first glance from the Epicurean philosophy that teaches us to embrace pleasure and avoid pain, since the simple pleasure of being alive and experiencing the present moment fully by avoiding the discomfort caused by holding on to grudges or worrying about the future comes naturally to a healthy, emotionally balanced and positive human being. Those views, having their origin in the world of ancient Greece, are completely in accordance with the teaching of Christ about forgiveness and trusting the divine providence without worrying about superficial things and the survival of the material vessel we call body. All those things can be expressed in one sentence: try to stay happy regardless of the circumstances. The problem with the modern way of life is that it renders man utterly dependent on artificiality and technology, and if we don't resist this, we are only going to get more and more so as time progresses, till we reach a point of no return. Then it will be possible for any human dictator to control the world by simply depriving people of electricity and of internet connection for a few hours. But let's not stray too far from the main point of this post and go back to the subject of Genesis. New cosmological and biological theories and findings come to the light almost every day in a hope to solve the enigma of our biological existence. DNA is gradually being decoded, and science is ever present to offer some explanation or other to the most puzzling questions regarding the function of the observable universe, the natural world and that of man himself. However, if one tries to explain man's presence on earth in a literalistic fashion solely, based on the Old Testament text, one is bound to get lost in unfounded reasoning. Spiritual texts possess deep spiritual significance, and it is at least an ill-targeted effort, well-intentioned though it may be, to reduce the Christian and other important texts to the level of a biological and cosmological essay. There may come a time when physics is in complete accordance with philosophy and theology, but this time hasn't come yet, and each side pulls the rope of the debate to an opposite direction, leading the world to a complete ideological dead end. If one accepts the fact that the Old Testament and New Testament are spiritual texts dealing with man's existential issues and not scientific texts providing answers to every objective and non-objective problem, there is no more reason for unfounded arguments from both sides trying to disprove one another, since each will remain free to limit their research within their own field of inquiry without having the one form of intellectual activity hindering the progress of the other. Sociologically speaking, every one of us can be both a snake and an Adam. We are Adams when we lose our own peace of mind and innocence as children, being victimized by the system, and we are the snake when we force others, and particularly our own offspring, to deny their true selves by becoming just another version of the robotic personality the system knows well how to create inside us. And I don't mean just the political, economic, scientific, educational, and religious system. I mean the whole materialistic system of values, as it is constructed from the foundation of organized society as we know it, from the Stone Age to the space exploration age, the rise of artificial intelligence, and generally speaking, the current technological outbreak. In fact, from the moment we enter this material world as forms of consciousness, or souls if you prefer, till the moment we leave it, we are not given a moment of peace to actually reflect on and deal with the existential anxiety always lurking at the back of our minds, usually being expressed by a constant worry about everyday matters, financial problems, paying the bills, cleaning our house, keeping our jobs, walking the dog, driving the kids to school, getting stuck in traffic, and other issues that, while not being actually what truly generates anxiety in us, offer to us a good excuse for not dealing with a really important matter of whether the way we walk in life is actually the one that truly expresses our genuine self and deep desire for beauty, truth, and fulfillment. To put it simply, if the choice we made when we denied our innocence for the sake of growing up and corrupted a part of ourselves to embrace the values of this world was actually a right one to make. One might ask, how can one not worry about practical things when obviously there is a whole system keeping us trapped in them? And if we were to rediscover our innocence and good, honest nature, wouldn't that be impractical? Wouldn't that make us weak and helpless when we are forced to face the cruelty and harshness of this world? Of course, at this stage, we can't completely disconnect ourselves from the current state of affairs. It would be naive to think so. However, inner beauty and freedom isn't a source of weakness. It actually makes us healthier individuals and more confident human beings by actually providing us with the energy to deal with the difficulties more efficiently. It frees us from existential depression by making clear our true purpose in life, happiness above all else, enough joy to fill our whole beings and everyone else around us. To be free from the need to make moral choices by simply surrendering to the divine will and function naturally according to our own best interest and the best interest of others. Cuts us free from our chains and leads us back to a world of purity, truly positive actions and fulfillment on every level. Maybe it's time to stop relying on rituals and spells of every kind for our salvation and actually pursue a true transformation of thought, emotion, and even essence if possible. We have a valuable guide in Christianity to achieve this, the teaching of Christ. But I'm the last person to diminish in any way the view of life and general function of others. There are many worldviews that coexist on this little planet of ours. Christians, Muslims, Hinduists, Buddhists, Taoists, Judaists, pantheists, atheists, and agnostics. And I don't have the knowledge and wisdom to evaluate their individual views. However, the final judgment of our choices lies in ourselves and can be achieved by one question: am I truly happy and fulfilled in my way of life, or do I constantly feel that there's something missing? A vital piece of the puzzle that needs to be put into place before being able to truly feel perfectly gratified and fulfilled in the deepest existential significance of the word. If the scale of our judgment when trying to answer this leans more or less obviously towards the second choice, the only way forward is a re-examination of our choices and the search for something new, truly valuable and meaningful. Thankfully, society has provided us with a great arsenal of distractions to prevent us from asking this simple but terrifying question. Cable TV, internet, video games, and virtual realities, Hollywood box office smashes, and entertainment of other kinds, much more addictive and harmful in nature. But do we really want to be left wandering in the darkness of uncertainty and emptiness while we distract ourselves with trivial and fleeting superficial pleasures, or do we want and need something more? No one will just hand it to us. We need to claim it, like any other thing worth having. Friendship, love, companionship, tenderness, and the right of expression. None of these things is a given. We must fight to achieve them, and we must put in the necessary effort to keep them once they have been achieved. This systematically built theme park of distractions is ever present to draw us into it. However, it will never be able to build an illusion convincing enough to substitute the real experience of existential fullness one can find in spirit, soul, and mind if he rediscovers his true self, this carefree child coming into this world full of promise, potential, and trust for other human beings, free of guilt and fear, sleeping soundly into the peaceful cradle of our soul, even if we live to be 100 years old. While we keep viewing this child as insignificant and weak, neglecting to feel its true power, the carefully structured, soul-devouring system will keep on manipulating us as it has done for centuries, and we have no hope for escape. We need to feel the true importance of innocence, imagination, dreams, tenderness, and love for truth and beauty if we want to get back our natural human inheritance and live in peace and harmony on this planet with every other form of life, acting in agreement with nature and other human beings and not against them. And if we want to rediscover a humanity stolen from us by the mechanic limited reasoning having emerged during the so-called Age of Enlightenment, where cause and effect reasoning became a substitute for the ability to actually feel and experience the truth and deep significance of things. Philosophers, from Plato to Henri Bergson, searched tirelessly for this deep truth, each in his own fashion, trying at the same time to fend off the constant attacks of the materialistic approach, manifesting with different names and titles throughout history in philosophy, religion, and science. However, for each step we took in the right direction, there were 2 or more setbacks. Consequently, our planet lies now on the brink of destruction. Nevertheless, nothing is judged yet, and we have the ability even now to lay the foundation for a reign of goodness and justice on this earth. But as one easily realizes, this will entail a certain inconvenience and discomfort for those of us content to stay within the constraints of the generally accepted view of the majority. Change always comes at a price for the established view. Copernicus and his heliocentric system are obvious examples of this reality, but to stay as we are will have an even greater cost for ourselves and the future generations of humans. So it really comes down not only to our existential, but also to our physical survival as a species. Surely, to build a new education centered on empathy, sensitivity, and humanity instead of antagonism and ruthlessness, as long as one wins, is a costly and slow-to-pay investment, but certainly most worthwhile. Surely, to teach children to appreciate truth and beauty more than grades and worldly success is not easy and perhaps not even pleasant for many of us. But really, what is the alternative? Being engulfed by virtual realities, consumerism, and addictive substances of all kinds, living in a pleasant lie while we slowly walk proudly on to extinction, and while our planet slowly turns to an inhospitable environment for life? I don't think so. Finally, we need to live up to God's design for us, if we believe in Him, and even if we don't, at least to live up to our own expectations that have never been to lose our humanity and substitute it with emotionless, mechanic artificiality. Emotions and beliefs count as much as thoughts, if not more, since our desire to do something, let's say a project of any kind, precedes our thinking out of the details and imagining it completed, let alone actually implementing it in the material world. So yes, desires, emotions, feelings matter, and we need to put them in the rightful place, in the very throne of our beings, if we want to achieve something meaningful. We need to educate our children to think this way, and we need to train ourselves to be what we must, in order to get saved in every sense one may give to this word. With this, I will conclude this first post. I hope I provided you with some food for thought, and that you'll show this post to anyone that matters to you and you think might find it useful. Thank you for reading, and God bless. If you enjoyed this first post, please subscribe and like. Thank you.